New is shiny, new is exciting, new is infinitely better than what exists. New is always more fun to talk about, and new is always better than what we have sitting in our homes, on our MacBooks, or lying in our handbags. We don't want old, we want new. However, anyone who has paid roughly any attention to the Gartner Hype Cycle knows that new is not always better, and nor does it always last. Alright, so what is the Gartner Hype Cycle, or what is hype cycles in general? When a new technology or idea comes into the market or into human knowledge, it enters the cycle. So it starts off at the innovation trigger, and then it moves up toward the very top of the peak of inflated expectations, and then it goes down to the trough of disillusionment, which sounds quite terrible, but basically that just means that people have gotten tired of hearing about it. They have gotten to a point where they think, oh, can't deal with this anymore, I don't believe these things, it can't do what I expected it to do, all these people's ideas and thoughts and things that people were saying are clearly not what this thing is capable of, I don't want it. Then it moves through quietly, I suppose, along the slope of enlightenment, up to the point where it's like rapidly adopted and everyone is kind of using it, but into a more realistic sense, and they're adapting it into daily life in ways that might not have initially been part of the sales pitch. Okay, and you might think, well, how does this have any use for us? But many years ago, the newspapers and television shows were awash with ideas that they thought the 21st century would be like. Things like flying cars and robot servants, and the idea of an artificially intelligent self-defense network that would have been well within our reach within the early years of the 2000s, and yet, I love the Terminator movie, but we fortunately rather, have not pursued that. Alright, well, where does this come from? Well, fear of another tech bubble, but now with AI. So we're in a weird space right now with the AI movement, or rather within the tech world, thanks in part to the layoffs, and there have been so many, and that has been quite distressing for many people, both within those within the industry, as well as those who are coming into it. As well as the drama within the crypto world, thanks to FTX, and of course Meta having difficulties with the metaverse. Investors and trendsetters alike are looking now for something new, and that new thing happens to be AI, thanks to the launch of OpenAI and all of these new things like ChatGPT. Okay, but of course there's a general level of distress, with one source lamenting that AI is having its time in the sun, but people are stressed that before it had its time in the sun, there was this metaverse hype, and before that it was cannabis and how exciting that would be for people, and before that it was 3D printing, and we can all remember how excited people were about that, but that hasn't really changed much of our lives and hasn't really realized the benefits that we had hoped for. So yeah, and another example is that many years ago people spoke about the introduction of ebooks and how exciting that was going to be, and how they were going to drive bookstores out of the market, and how people are just going to absolutely love reading on their Kindles and ebook reader devices. But in fact today, many people, part of my generation, like Gen Zs and others, are going to bookstores in force. They are reading more than ever, but they're reading print, and that they are really loving print books. Not to say that ebooks don't have a place, but the love of print has not gone away, and in fact it has become much stronger, especially amongst people who love nostalgia, who love these items that have memory and meaning within our lives. Okay, now, what is an innovation obsession? So the problem with all of this is, well, that we live in a world where we are obsessed with the idea of innovation. Don't believe me? In 2019, the most good innovation was searched for more times than terrorism, economic growth, and climate change, or what was it, global warming, okay? And but obviously within the Google search. So we, as in the whole world, search for innovation more times because we are just so pepped by this idea. And Professor Vaclav Smil has two main problems with this. One, large projects that have failed after enormous sums of money and countless hours of research, have gone into it, well, kind of like the failed innovation. And then, of course, repeated instances where we as humanity should know better and should adopt better things, but we do not because they're basically just the status quo. So we have ideas, but we refuse to go and innovate in those areas. So one of my favorite examples of the first can be found on YouTuber Adam Something's channel, where he talks about how trains have been invented again, and they're quite funny to watch. But people keep trying to reinvent trains because it's just a fantastic thing. But instead of just focusing on other far more pressing areas, they're focusing on something that already works. And then on the other hand, Professor Smil brings up these two examples, which I just thought were fantastic, of these instances of humanity sticking to things that are clearly not working. And one of them was airport boarding. Now, we all know the immense mess of getting onto an airplane. It takes forever and it's very cumbersome and it's very frustrating. But there are multiple ways of doing this. One example is just to get rid of assigned seating, which I don't know how that would work. But another example is to do alternative, like allowing the back and front of the passengers to board at the same time, or doing pyramid assigned boarding, or there's many different scenarios that you could do. But that would be a way to go about fixing that. And another great example is the fact that we still measure our economy with GDP, even though we know that GDP will go up because it's really just a measure of gross domestic product, or basically the amount of goods and services produced in a society within 1 year. Goes up when things are going well, so people are purchasing lots of new goods because they have lots of jobs and all these things. But it also goes up during hard times when people are going through like a massive depression and things like that, because now they're buying lots of alcohol and buying lots of negative experiences for themselves. So these are not ideal. So constantly trying to come up with new and having a country pushing for their citizens to come up with the answer to what in a globalized world is largely shared problems is wasted at best and ridiculous at worst. Daniel Ben Horan, when writing for the Stanford Social Innovation Review, speaks about the fact that in today's world, we don't just need innovation, we need propagation, which is the action of widely spreading and promoting an idea, theory, etc. We need organizations with financial resources, as well as human experts and people who are able to connect people who have the answers and potential solutions across the globe together, so the way we can get to a point where we share the ideas that are needed for people. We also need to be able to adapt these ideas into the relevant socio-cultural context of each country, because something that works in one part of Africa won't necessarily work exactly the same way in another part of Africa or in just another part of the world. So that would be another part of it, and that's kind of where we are. So how do you go about preparing for yourself in a world that is constantly beset by trend seeking? Number one, you need to employ critical thinking. In order to make an informed opinion about something, you need to have a good understanding of it, and therefore you're going to have to go deep into this topic. Well, you're going to have to read books about it, you're going to have to read journal articles or academic articles on it, you're going to need to watch YouTube videos, you're really going to need to engage into the topic so you can have an informed opinion about what this thing can do, what it can't, how will it impact, and not just go along with the trend-seeking vitriol that is often spread on YouTube. Then recognize that change takes time. Startups can move slightly faster, but even they have a limit to how fast they can proceed, thanks in part to limited resources or just the need to promote their goods out there. But in general, it takes time to onboard people into new ways of work or new ways of doing things, and change management is a thing, and you can't always just prescriptively tell people what to do. And the other is that it is a tool of some kind, so you need to go and familiarize yourself with it, and it will take time for you to know how to use it effectively and to be able to really understand the limits of what it will do. And then finally, you need to be able to think forward in terms of your career. Is this a skill or a tool that you will need, and so therefore that you actually have to go and learn about and prepare and trying to come up with some tutorials or use cases for it? Or is it not relevant to you? And before you go and enroll yourself in some kind of expensive course or thing that is claiming to be able to assist you, figure out what you can do in a more cost-effective way through like tutorials or books or things like that that can help you in learning. Remember, things take time, industries take a while, especially if it's a corporation. It will take a while to move on to this thing, so you have time and you don't always need to hop on it. People have been talking about cybersecurity for years, and only now are you really seeing people come along with making cybersecurity this massive thing within companies and try to get cybersecurity experts and employees and whole divisions. So it takes time. So if you take your time to come up, it isn't the end of the world. Alright, my name is Celestine and I make videos on tech, lifestyle and books, and I will see you in next week. Bye.